Marianne Sciucco is an author, nurse, and co-founder of ALZ Authors, a global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience. The goal: to aspire to lift the silence and stigma that often accompanies Alzheimer's and dementia, the most important illnesses of our generation, affecting an estimated 55 million people worldwide. Marianne is here today to provide knowledge and insight for caregivers and loved ones who are navigating the sometimes lonely and challenging brain disease of dementia. Let go. Marianne Sciucco, welcome to Uncommon Philanthropist.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, it is a delight to get to know you and to have this time together. We share a lot of common interests, and I love talking about the different forms of philanthropy. And I think you're involved in so many forms of philanthropy, and just to cast a broader net about encouraging people what philanthropy looks like, with caregiving being, for me, just at the top of the pyramid of one of the highest forms of philanthropy. So we're going to get into that today. So I thank you for being here and for sharing more about your journey, Marianne. Tell us a little bit about you as a girl growing up. What did you envision your life to be like?
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, and there were 4 children in my family. I was the oldest and the only girl, so I had a great spot. I was the queen. I was the boss. And when I was a little girl, I loved to read, and I wanted to be a writer. And that was what I set out to do. When I was in high school, I went to the guidance counselor to talk about my, career aspirations. It was 1978, 1979. And I said, I want to be a writer. And he said to me, you can be a nurse, a teacher, or a secretary. I think you'll be a good nurse. So he tried to dissuade me from that path. But, I didn't listen because I was the boss. And I went to school at the University of Massachusetts at Boston. I studied English. I did a lot of work, freelance work with a number of different newspapers in the area. Not only did I get to see my name in print, but somebody paid me for it, which was a really good lesson because it proved to me that my words were worth money. And that's important when you want to write a book or do anything, you want to know that somebody's willing to pay for it. So that was very helpful, built up a lot of confidence. And I never really dreamed that I would become a nurse. Mr. Firing, he was right after all these years. And I tried to make it as a newspaper reporter. It wasn't easy. Was not really a career field for women in the 1980s. It was hard to break into anything. And I couldn't earn a living. I could work, but not make money. So that wasn't good because I had to be self-sufficient. And I ended up deciding to go into nursing because at the time there was a crisis of nurses in the United States. So I thought, well, let me give this a chance. I am not science-oriented. I struggled with that. Yeah, I couldn't, I didn't even want to go near it, or math. Math was tough too, but I was, I was a creative. So I approached it from that point of view. And I managed to, I went to nursing school. I passed. I got my license and I started working.
Awesome.
And I ended up working a lot with people who had dementia. So I had a soft spot for them. I had an aunt that I loved growing up. She was like my mother. She was like our grandmother. She was 15 years older than my mother. So she was like our grandmother. And she had Alzheimer's. So I got to experience that firsthand, what it was like. And this was in the 1980s, 1990s. So care was very different then. And I witnessed a lot of things and got involved in that environment. And it's very different now than what it was then. In many ways, it's still the same. But I really was exposed to caregiving, both professional and personal, family caregiving at a young age. So I never really thought that I would write a book about Alzheimer's. But I wrote the book and then I connected with other authors who had written books about Alzheimer's. And the next thing you knew, we had this nonprofit.
I've heard it said that your story is not for you. The things that we experience, and when we have a story in our heart, it's not for us. It's for us to share.
Right.
So for you to to be bold in sharing what you know, and there's power in that, and I do believe story is philanthropy, especially when you're talking about something difficult like dementia,
Uh-huh.
and the diagnosis is just so devastating. I'm a dementia daughter, and I believe you are as well,
Uh-huh.
and, just, you get it, and I was kind of the same time span as you, and just not a lot of resources and not a lot of hope along the way. So I'm glad that we're having these conversations, that we're talking about it more, that there are organizations like you and your co-authors founded, ALZ Authors, that we're dedicated to sharing these stories and providing good real world resources for families and caregivers going through this. Because there is hope. There
So,
is hope. There's
so
not hope for a cure, but there's hope for quality time with your
exactly.
loved one. I mean, you don't want to miss it just because they're different.
Exactly.
And, when somebody has another type of disease that's more physical, less mental, they're different, but you still love them through it. So I'm glad that we're fighting for understanding and less stigma against dementia. So let's talk about that stigma that exists.
Mhm.
What have you seen through your eyes, Marianne?
Well, people think of it as a death sentence, which it can be. I
Mm,
mean, it is a terminal
mm,
illness. However, people
yes.
usually die of something else on the way. It does not mean that your life is ending today or tomorrow or next week or next month. Many people go on for years and even decades after a dementia diagnosis,
Mhm,
so they still have a lot of years to live, and they can still be good years full of joy and love and adventure and pretty
mm,
much anything that anybody else would experience. It's not all doom and gloom, and they're not waiting to die. So we have so many authors in our organization who are either caregivers or living with the disease themselves that will tell you that. Peter Berry says life after a dementia diagnosis is just different.
mm,
And
mhm,
his father had Alzheimer's, so he knew what was to befall him. But his father lived for 25 years, and he had a good life, even though he had Alzheimer's. So Peter kind of expected that for himself, and he's a really good example. Peter Berry, he lives in the United Kingdom. So
mm,
I know many people in our organization who have been with us for a long time, anywhere from 5 or more years, and we write them on our podcast, and they still are able to get on and share their stories and be very eloquent. And sometimes I wonder, when I'm putting something together and gee, I wonder if so and so is going to be up for this. And, I contact them, and they are. And it's
mhm,
been, years since they've been diagnosed, and they're still going strong. So they also have discovered creativity in their dementia,
mhm,
new or hidden talents. A lot of inhibitions are thrown away. So people might be willing to try things that perhaps they didn't
mhm.
want to try when they didn't think they could be an artist. And then
Yes.
they discover they can paint and create things that other people will want, that will want to hang or
Mhm,
want to purchase. So that gives them validation. Or write. They write, books. They write blog posts. They share their
mm,
story. And that's one of our mottos is sharing our stories makes us stronger. And the
yes.
other one is you are not alone. So we want caregivers to know that
Mhm,
although it might feel like you're the only one going through this, you're not. There's millions, I don't know, 15, 16 million caregivers and paid caregivers in the United
mm,
States. People are also going through this. You may know them, you may not know them. But if we share our
mm.
stories and share what we've learned with one another, I mean, that can make all the difference in your caregiving journey. We can't rely on healthcare systems to support us. They
Mhm.
don't.
Yeah, they don't.
Practical information is good, scientific information is good, but people really want to know the nuts and bolts of how to get through a day and how to manage behaviors and
Mhm,
situations. And that's where you learn from other people what has worked for them. And we share that,
mm,
through our writings. Our authors are very brave. Most of the authors have never written a book before, but felt they were compelled to write their story about caring for their mother or their husband or whoever it was. And that was it. They never wrote another book after that. They're not professional people, but they managed to put together a meaningful, quality piece of work. And so our job is to elevate that and to try to get that out to as many hands as possible.
Well, I know I've shared with you that I've written a book about my mom's life story called Maxine's
Oh, yes,
Joy,
yes, yes.
and yeah, it's been, I lost my mom 28 years ago
Wow.
to Alzheimer's, and always wanted to do something to honor her life and
Mhm.
to raise money for
Mhm.
Alzheimer's causes. And just, how that heaviness lays on your heart and you have good intentions about doing something and you just never do it.
Right.
Well, when I launched Uncommon Philanthropist earlier this year, I found myself, I just kept talking about, the promise that I was going to do something. And I was like, okay, stop and figure out what the heck you're gonna do. And, my mom, she was such a lovely, kind, beautiful woman, but she's been gone for 28 years. And I was like, okay, God, what made my mom most special? And it was like, boom, her joy. And then I was like, okay, that's it. I'll write a children's book. It was really so simple, just getting quiet and being intentional and finding something to do for her life. And it was healing, writing the book. It was healing. I feel like I'm closer to my mom. Saying her name, Maxine, sharing her story, sharing the kind of the hope part of Alzheimer's, that hard times come, better days are ahead. I think that's
Right.
a relevant message for kids and adults. We get consumed with our hardship. And my mom was born in 1924, and she lived through the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, and it didn't break her. It just only made her stronger. And I think very appreciative of the life that she eventually led, being a homemaker and raising children. And I don't know. I'm proud of her and her joy. And I don't know if I would have articulated her life story if I would have written a book for adults, but I'm, really kind of honing in on that part of her, and crafting it for a children's book has been such a blast. I have a devotional book in the works, but
Hmm.
I'm ready to do another children's book because it was really fun.
Oh, yeah. So many of the books in the collection at ALZ Authors were written years beyond the loss of that person.
Mhm.
People, it's very hard to write these kind of stories because you have to revisit some of the most painful things in your past, and people
Right.
don't want to go there. People find once they do that it's very cathartic. It can help
Yes.
heal wounds, and we believe at ALZ Authors that we all heal each other through these stories. We
Mhm.
find validation,
Mhm.
and we can try to, fill up the holes that the dementia experience left behind. So like
Yeah.
you, many of the authors, they don't want to tackle that until sometimes years go by. Some people are writing during the journey.
Mm.
Many people keep a diary or a journal, and they use that as the
Oh,
basis of their work. So there's like a lot of different ways that people go about it. But everybody has the feeling in their heart that they want to pay tribute to their person, their mom, their dad, whoever it was, and what they
yes.
went through. And a lot of the books have come from that. And also the wanting to share your knowledge. It's very hard won knowledge, learning about this disease and
Mhm.
learning how to live
Mhm.
through it. People suffer through that.
Yes.
It's not given to you. Unfortunately, nobody can give you a template and say, here, do this. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
So people, when they discover something that worked for them, they want to share it with other people because maybe it'll work for
Mhm.
you. And it might work for you today. We go day by day. In many
Mhm.
cases, we go moment by moment. And that's
Yes.
something about the dementia journey that people consider to be the gift is learning how to live in the present. Because in dementia, that's all there is. There is no past. There is no future. It's only what's going on right now because you can't talk about the past and you
Mhm.
can't talk about the future to somebody who doesn't understand that concept. So we have to learn how to
Yeah.
live in the present. So those are like some of the
And I
things.
think really struggle. I know I struggle with that. I'm here, but I'm
Right.
thinking,
What am I going to do next?
what's next? So that's a gift, and that's something valuable to learn for the caregiver
Hmm.
to really
Yeah.
focus on
For everybody.
being present. And I've also learned that, especially if you have a loved one who's agitated
Hmm.
because of their dementia, that a lot of times the triggers come from the loved one
Hmm.
who, they just don't really know how to properly handle a certain situation. Do you have any insight you can share on that, man?
Well, you can always look for like basic human needs. Is the person hungry? Are they cold? Are they hot? Those kind of things.
Mhm.
How are they physically feeling? And if you can rule that out, then you move to the next. Is it environment? What's going on socially? People, even if they're nonverbal, can pick up on body language and other cues they can hear. So if you're stressed yourself and they're picking up on that, it's
Mhm.
contagious. Anxiety is contagious. So if you're like,
100%.
having a moment and you don't think that they realize what's going on or they're not paying attention to you. They're picking up on all these cues. And so that's, bringing it together for them. So that only escalates your situation. So people need to really pay attention to how they interact with their person and not talk over them. That's important. People don't want you to talk about them or even reveal like personal information to others in front of them when they're sitting there. That could be a trigger point right there. Overstimulation is also a trigger point if there's too much going on. So if you've got the TV on and you're on the phone and there's kids around and stuff's happening, the dog's barking, then that's going to trigger your person. And the same thing goes with boredom. If there is not enough stimulation, if people are bored or lonely, then they're going to respond to that. And boredom is a huge thing. And that's something new, I think, that they've been, trying to talk about, is having people engaged in whatever activities that they can do. So we have authors in our collection who have used art, different forms of art, to help relieve boredom, or music. Music is a huge one. Music always is the magic, we say. Music will always bail you out. The other thing is cooking. We have one author who wrote a cookbook for caregivers and how to help your person be a part of meal preparation, because that's important. It makes them feel valued and productive. Gives them something to do with their hands. They're included. There's going to be a finished product. Everyone will enjoy it. There's a lot going on with that. So there are things that you can do. It's work. It's work. It's time consuming. You have to think about it. It's not like babysitting. It's not like taking care of children. And in a lot of ways it is, because you would probably employ a lot of that with them. We don't inherently know what to do. So I think that's what trips up a lot of people, is they kind of think that they should have picked up through their life experience how to handle somebody in this situation, but you don't. And there's no owner's manual. You don't get a book that says, do this today and next week we're going to work on that. It just doesn't work that way. So there are a lot of things that you can do if your person is agitated or disruptive. Try to find out why and try to, fix it.
I think patience is a biggie for caregivers. What words of advice can you give people for really kind of building that patience muscle with their loved ones?
You first have to be patient with yourself, and you have to know that you're probably going to make mistakes, and it's okay, as long as you don't kill the person, then you're okay. We all make mistakes, and we're not, none of us knows what to do. It's not something we were born with. You need to first have patience with yourself, and you need to understand the disease process, how it affects the brain. This is a brain disease. People are not trying to be difficult. There's a saying that says people with dementia aren't giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. So it's not about directed at you. So if you understand like the pathology of the person's illness, and there is many different types of dementia, so it would be important to know, like, which type of dementia are we dealing with? Because at least that can give us kind of a framework to say, okay, well, this is probably what's going to happen. And some things happen in one type of dementia that don't happen in another type of dementia, or it can all be mixed up. But to actually understand the diagnosis and to have a routine and to stick with it. Routines are important, and it lets the person anticipate what's going to be happening in their day next. They get up, they have breakfast, they take their pills, maybe they go for a walk. Maybe there's a caregiver who comes to the house, whatever is going on in a family, because there could be children, they could be living alone. I mean, there's so many different scenarios. But patience is a learned skill. We don't all have it. It's hard to be patient sometimes with like another adult that doesn't get it, like what you're trying to do or say, and so you lose it. But they can't help it. So it's something that you need to work on and build. It's not something that I don't think it comes naturally.
I agree. And I've also heard that you don't want to use words like, do you remember? Don't you remember that? Or Mom, you just told me that. That's that can be very triggering and hurtful for your loved one because they can't help it.
Right. That's true. When you engage in that type of conversation, you're making the person feel bad and maybe even triggering a situation or a meltdown that you don't want to handle. So it's sometimes better just to go along with it and change the subject. Use distraction. So if somebody keeps asking the same question all the time, take them somewhere else. Go to another room, find another activity, go for a walk, try to break that, whatever it is that they're thinking of. People often look for family members that are deceased. They forget.
Mhm.
that their husband died or their wife died, and they keep asking, where are they? You don't say that they died. They don't remember that. So they're going to react as if they'd never heard that before. They're going to become very upset. Now you're going to have a situation that you don't want. So if
Mhm.
somebody would
Mhm.
say, like when was my mother-in-law with her mother, when her mother would ask about her husband, she learned to tell her, he went fishing, he'll be home later. Because he would do that. That would be
Mm.
something he would do. And she'd be
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, he's coming home later. And so that would stop it. But to have to go and make them relive, just think to yourself, like when you first hear about somebody that you care for has passed away, the shock and horror. So we don't want to continue
Mhm.
to put them through that. It's just like a little, I
Right.
guess it's like a little fib or a fiblet, people call it.
Mhm.
You're not really lying and trying to evade. Sometimes you just have to
Right.
evade some things because you know that it's not going to benefit them to have to go through that.
Right.
And we
And
know
it's okay to do that.
it's okay
It's
to do
okay.
that.
I know people with high integrity, they're like, "I'm not gonna lie to my mom." Circumstances call for you do what works
Yeah.
and what's best for your loved one.
The other big lie is when they are living in care, if they've had to move to like
Mm,
assisted living or to a home
mm,
somewhere, and you sold their house and they want to know where their house is and when they can go home. That's a really
so
tricky
hard.
situation to try to handle that. That's when, you don't want to say to them, well, we sold your house. That's
Yes.
devastating. And
Yeah.
my stepfather, he would ask me all the time about his car. And he hadn't even driven in the car in months. But he would still ask me about where's my car? He was in a nursing home. Where's my car? I said, oh, it's at home.
Mhm.
We have it. And we did. Somebody else was driving it, but we still had it. So I said, oh, the car's good. We have it. Yeah, so it's at home. And he'd be like, oh, okay. That's all he wanted to know, that he still had his car. So we got around that one. So
No, I think children, grandkids visiting, I think the human interaction is so important to have community around our loved ones a nursing home can be a difficult situation for everybody. How do you kind of coach people through that to kind of get over the how can you make that easier for families visiting a loved one who may be in assisted living and they're not in their normal home environment? How can we make that better for them and come around them in love and support as family?
it
Uh,
depends on the age
I
of the
don't even know how.
child.
Mhm,
That's a huge factor. Very small children are resilient. They don't care. They're just
mhm,
going someplace and they're going to get a lot of
mhm.
attention because everybody's going to be thrilled to see them. So
Yes.
it's never a bad thing. I mean, obviously you don't want to bring a newborn into a care facility because people could be sick, and you don't want to
Mhm,
let your crawlers on the floor. That used
mhm,
to drive me crazy when I worked in the hospital, and people would bring little babies and put them on the floor and let them crawl. No, dirty. So other than that, little children, they can do really well and they can participate in things and they can have conversation and bring joy and enjoy themselves. That is not
mm,
a bad thing. And children, if they're close to that person, they're going to know that something's wrong. If, a young child's, their mother leaves every day in the afternoon or on the weekend or something to go attend to her parent that's in a place or assisted living or whatever you want to call it, then the child knows mom's not here. And then where's mom? So it's better to bring them along and let them see where she is and what's going on and maybe even be
mhm,
helpful. They can play, they can listen to music, they can do
mhm,
games, they can do all of that stuff. And that's a really good thing.
mhm,
As children get older, though, like especially preteens and teens, then it becomes a little more difficult now because they're being exposed to some of the realities in life of aging and
mhm,
things like that maybe they don't really know about. And that can be frightening. But at the same time, if they love that person, then you want to make sure that they have the option to be included. I mean, if they're really adamant that they don't want to be a part of it, then they shouldn't be forced to be a part of it.
mhm.
Sometimes they just want to remember that person the way that they were, you know,
Yeah.
prior to the situation. So I think it all depends upon the age. A lot of people say, oh, children, they don't need to know about this. Well, yeah, they do because it's happening in their family.
Mm,
They see it. They're not oblivious. They know
right.
something's wrong. They know grandma doesn't act right. They know their mother's not home when they want her to be. There's a lot going on.
Mhm,
Mother's stressed, mother's
mhm,
crying. There's so many issues. And so we have so many children's books like yours in our collection to help people, to read a story,
mhm,
and then that opens up a pathway for discussion. And then we have young adult books too for teens, so you could always do that as well. But to try to educate them
mhm.
into what's going on, they can know. Many children are caregivers. So a
Mm.
lot of people might not even realize that. But there are kids who, before they go to school in the morning, have to get grandma out of bed and take her to the bathroom and do that and make sure she takes her meds and make sure she eats before they get on a school bus. That's a reality that a lot of kids are living with, when somebody lives at home. So they are in the conversation. So we don't need to exclude them.
That's really good.
Mm.
Really good. I've heard looking at pictures together is a good thing.
Yeah, pictures. I mean, the person might not be able to explain who the people are in the pictures, but you can still look. Picture books are great. There are books that have been created for people who have dementia that are like picture books with very simple language, and they would be appropriate for people to use with their children. Those are on our website. In case people are looking for something like that, we can refer them to those books. Some of them are perfect for like a home to buy, to have, part of their activities, to actually have those booklets around. But they're very well done and thought out, but they would be a good tool to share. And sometimes just looking at pictures of historical things and historical people might trigger like memories to people where they would tell stories about their lives.
Because that long-term memory, that's really the last thing that stays
Right. The
intact.
long-term memory. They can like go on and on and on about somebody they knew in high school, but they don't remember who they talked to yesterday.
For sure. I know we lost my mother-in-law to dementia as well, and she was in quite a lovely facility, home as they call it now. They don't like to refer to it as
I don't know what to call it anymore.
facilities. But we had wonderful memories there with her, and my kids were teenagers, and they went willingly, and I know they have wonderful memories and pictures. We laughed, we met other people there, and you just really have to make the most of it, and just go. You can't see them enough. Love them where they're at, and love, love, love. I mean, I think caregiving is one of the highest forms of philanthropy, and it's difficult, man. That day in, day out, but that is, philanthropy. A lot of people think it's about giving money, it's about rich people, and no, it's about love of humanity, and to, just to wrap your arms around your loved one and make sure that they're fed and they're safe and they're well cared for, and just do it to the best of your ability. I know it's hard, but what a beautiful thing in the end to be able to do that for another one. And a lot of times it's our parents who raised us from,
Right.
and it's returning that love to them in a different kind of way.
Absolutely. So many people in my organization say that, they would do it again, no matter how hard it was. They would do it again.
And then when they do pass away, you miss them.
Oh, yeah.
There's relief, and if you're a believer, that there's heaven and restoration, and that they're whole and new, but you miss that last season of life person that you had to. So there can be joy in that too. Well, Marianne, tell me about your novel series that you've written about blue hydrangeas. This is such a cool thing. So tell me about that.
I said earlier that it was always my dream that I was going to write a book. So in 2002, I said, let me get this done. And I started writing this story about people I met in my work. So by that point, I was a registered nurse. I was working in case management. And I met this lovely couple one day. I was at work covering on the rehab unit for somebody else that had the day off. She left me a list of her patients, what needed to be done. There was this one couple. They had a discharge plan in place for the following day. She said, you don't have to see them. Everything is set. I said, oh, great. I won't go there. But as I was walking down the corridor, doing my rounds, I walked by this room and caught a glimpse of this couple and made eye contact with the woman. And she was just beautiful. She was so lovely. 86 years old, white haired, hair up in a bun. So she was just very pretty. And her husband, he was very frail. He must have been older than her. So, she waves to me. So I decide to go in. I don't have to, but I say, oh, let me go in and see these people. And I tell them who I am. And they tell me that they had driven up from Florida, the state of Florida, to New York on their own, which was astounding, because they didn't look like they could do anything like that. And when she got home, she fell. She broke her pelvis. So now she was going to another rehab, a long-term rehab for more therapy. She was probably being placed there permanently due to Alzheimer's, but that was what the plan was. And her son was there. He was visiting, and he was all business. And he said, can I, tomorrow when they leave, I don't want my father to drive my mother to the place. I would like to drive them. Is that okay? And I said, absolutely, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. And then I left them that day and that night. I couldn't stop thinking about them. And I was wondering what would happen if, for some reason, the son didn't show up and he took the wife and they left. Where would they go? What would they do? Because he didn't, he doesn't want her to go to this place because he knows what it means. And even though it's unsaid, he knows that when she enters the facility, she's not coming out. And he knows that in his heart. So that's how I came up with my story, Blue Hydrangeas. So I placed it on Cape Cod, which explains the blue hydrangeas because they grow in abundance there and they're just beautiful and gorgeous. And I said, well, who would call their house a name? And I said, oh, innkeepers. So I made them innkeepers. So Blue Hydrangeas is a bed and breakfast. And I wrote that story and published it in 2013. It took me 9 years to publish. And then I ended up making friends with the people who became my co-founders of ALZ Authors. And so that was like the first book of ALZ Authors. And then was Jean Lee's Alzheimer's daughter and Vicky Lee's Vicky Tapia's Somebody Stole My Iron. She was the third book. So in the meantime, I would hear from readers and they were intrigued by the inn. They want to go there. How do I find it? They would ask me. I said, well, you can't find it. It's not a real place. We want to know more about the inn. So I said, maybe I should write some more books about the inn. What should I write? Oh, I'll write a Christmas book. It's good to have a Christmas book in your collection so that you can market it during the holidays. And it might be the entry point for people to discover your work. So I said, I'll write a Christmas story. So I did it. But the Christmas story is a prequel. It goes back to like 20 odd years prior to her Alzheimer's. So you get to see what she was, kind of a person she was like. And then in that story, the son, who is a graduate student, brings home a friend. I'm bringing a friend home, he tells his mother, for the holidays. And she's like, oh, that's great. She thinks it's a young man. It's not. It's a young woman. So that becomes her daughter-in-law. So then the next book, I said, well, the next book is going to be a wedding at Blue Hydrangeas. So I finished that this year. It took me a long time to write a book, and they're not big books. But anyway, that's how I created that trilogy. So it's not all about Alzheimer's, but it's all about, family. And every book, the common denominator is grief, is people who are, overcoming some sort of grief, and usually multiple people. And they all converge. They end up converging together at the end. And at the end, they find healing.
Well, I haven't had a chance to read them, but they are definitely on my list. And congratulations on publishing not 1, but 2 and 3 books.
Yes.
That's a huge accomplishment. It is a big deal. So ALZ Authors is going through a bit of a transformation. Would you like to share a little bit about that and what that means to people who have come to depend on your content?
Yeah. So when we started ALZ Authors in 2015, there were 3 of us whose main objective was to promote our own books. We were not altruistic in any way. We were looking to do promotion. One of the kiss of deaths in publishing is to constantly be telling people, buy my book. But if you can get other people to tell people to buy your book, then that's good. That's a good thing. So that's how we started out, supporting each other, doing social media campaigns, blogging for each other, sharing the books that way. We did that twice in 2015, 2 different campaigns. And then in 2016, when World Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month rolls along in June, I contacted them in May. I said, why don't we do this again? But this time, why don't we invite other authors to share their books about Alzheimer's and dementia? Why don't we start a blog? So we launched the blog. And our plan was that we were going to do a book a day for 4 weeks, Monday to Friday. So we needed 20 authors to write a blog post for us. And we didn't know these people. We didn't know if anybody would want to do this. So and all the books we read. So that's the most important thing, is we read all the books. So it was a big project, and we started writing to people. People were responding. And, most of these people, they weren't famous writers or anything like that. They were just regular people like us. And they were so thrilled to be asked. And ALZ Authors, brand new, had no traction. Nobody had ever heard of us before, but we managed to not only pull together the 20 posts, we had more. There were more coming. So we just said, why don't we just keep doing it? We'll do it once a week. We'll put out a new one. And then when we run out, that'll be the end of it. Well, we still haven't run out. And now it's been 10 years. So throughout that time, we became a C3, 19. And then we started the podcast in 2020. Having the podcast allowed us to do virtual events. So we started hosting 3 or 4 virtual panel discussions every year with our authors. Everything is built around the authors, of promoting the authors and the books. So we have that going for us. We have a YouTube channel. We have merchandise. We just have a lot of stuff going on. We have free resources. We have a lot of things. So it's been basically this core group now of 6 individuals currently who are piloting this ship. It's been 10 years, and everybody's getting older, and people are starting to want to go into new directions in their retirement years. So we made the decision that we were going to retire, and we were going to find a new home for our website and our podcast. So the podcast is a separate entity, exists on the Whole Care Network, and that's where people will find all of the podcasts that we've done through December of 2025. But the website is going to be moved to another entity called allhomecarematters.com, which is another podcast by Lance Slatton at Enriched Life Home Care Services in Michigan, who's been a good friend to us. Both Lance and Chris McClellan, who runs the Whole Care Network, have been some of our biggest supporters and best friends. And we've got a lot of friends through this project. So we decided to split the baby. Podcast is staying where it was launched and where it's lived for the last 5 years. And then the website goes over to another entity. And hopefully in 2026, the plan is that we will continue to do the monthly books and the podcast and, try to keep some degree of ALZ Authors still producing. In the meantime, everything that currently exists will live on in these, in these 2 places. People will be able to access them. People will be able to use our old links to get to where they need to go. We're not changing any of that. We're just looking forward to seeing go on and seeing what happens next.
Yeah. Next chapters.
Always
got to be moving ahead. And so my tagline for Uncommon Philanthropist is let go. It sounds like you're in a big season of letting go. So I would love for you to give us a let go and then wrap us up about your work with ALZ Authors and being a nurse and a writer. How would you close us out with a big let go finish?
Well, for me, it's a struggle. I said earlier I was the boss. I was the only daughter, the oldest sister, the only girl. And I was always used to being in control. So I controlled this project for 10 years now. So I had help from my team, obviously, but like they say that I was the leader and I was the popcorn. I was always the one coming up with all the ideas. Having to let go of that was hard. I wasn't anticipating it. I thought that it would be a project that would continue well into my retirement. But when, other people said they needed to back off, I knew I couldn't do it by myself. So I had to let go of a lot of that and we have to hand it over to somebody else whom we trust will maintain its integrity. We did what we could for 10 years. Letting go it can be difficult, but at the same time, it's going in a positive direction because I have going through a lot of changes in my life right now with retirement, leaving my job of 15 years, becoming a snowbird. I'm going to be a grandmother in December.
Woo!
Yeah, so I have a new job. And then, with the changes with ALZ Authors. So, that's a lot. That's kind of a lot. New job, new home, new life.
Yeah.
Let go.
Pretty awesome. Well, I have enjoyed our conversation so much. So for now, share the website and how people can get in touch with you because I know you have multiple online.
Oh, yeah, we're everywhere. We're ALZ Authors, ALZ, short for Alzheimer's, ALZ Authors, AUTHORS.com. We have a website. We have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, and what's that other one? Oh, yeah, Twitter. We're there too. So we're on all those social media platforms. Every day we post something, some type of inspiration or a tip or a book about caregiving for Alzheimer's and dementia. So you could, subscribe to that. I have a website myself, Marianne Sciucco, MarianneSciucco.com. You can find out about my trilogy, Blue Hydrangeas, and some other books I've written.
Well, I wish you well, and I look forward to keeping in touch. Let go, Marianne.
Thank you.
Let go.
Let go.